Okay. You want my insight into the importance of Rowley, of the Rowley decision, and that's the Supreme Court decision that came out of the 80s. It sort of was the determiner on what a free and appropriate public education was from the 80s up until just a few years ago, when the Supreme Court finally revisited what a free and appropriate public education is or was, and how to properly sort of do an analysis. And look, these Supreme Court decisions aren't necessarily meant for the schools themselves or even parents, or they're not necessarily there as guidance for the IEP team, as much as they are guides for the appellate courts. And then after the appellate courts, you have guidance for the district court, federal district courts. And then after the federal district courts, you have guidance, and these things filter down. So it took years upon years for the Rowley decision from the 80s to start coalescing into various bright line rules and one-liners, wingdingers, if you want to call it that the appellate courts or the district courts or hearing officers could insert into their decisions that were in line with the Rowley decision. Okay, like every child's entitled to a Chevy level of education instead of a Cadillac. Well, that was something that came out of the Rowley decision, all right? That every child's entitled to a Chevy, they're not entitled to a Cadillac. The basic floor of opportunity, that was another one-liner that came out of there. That, your child is entitled to a basic floor of opportunity and no more. All right, and that tended to be this analysis of what progression was. That it's a basic floor of opportunity, not higher than that, which then lends over to that Cadillac versus Chevy. And then I've had, a hearing officer put in there that my child that wasn't even entitled to a Chevy, they were entitled to a serviceable Chevy, which is not the same thing. But you see how these things morph, and you're dealing with imperfect humans. But the Rowley decision, the big takeaway from that is that the child that was behind the Rowley decision was had a learning disability, and so was on the higher end with regards to the child's I guess competence level, ability level, learning disability side. The new standard that came to be a few years ago, called the Endrew F, Endrew, Endrew F. All right. So the Endrew F Supreme Court decision dealt with a child that had behavioral issues and academic issues, was more moderately to severely impacted, whereas Rowley was not moderately or severely impacted. So the Supreme Court took that up because it was a novel issue. Well, what about these kids? All right, the Rowley decision, sort of helped us understand what progress was for, higher functioning, learning disabled children, but what about the more moderate to severely impacted kids, and what would progress look like there? And that's where they differentiate. Now that we're under the Endrew F standard, the benefit for the learning disability aspect is it's tied into this new standard. And the takeaway for that standard is we need tangible, measurable progress. Tangible, measurable progress. And it raises the bar of what that would be, as opposed to Rowley with it's a little bit more ambiguous, basics, okay? So it's actually a benefit. I like the Endrew F standard so much better. So we don't even use Rowley anymore. So I would go back. I would read the Endrew F and take away from that. But at the same time, I caution you, because your IEP team's not going to be equipped to understand that. not at that level. It is really there as a confidence boost for the parent that they're pushing or requesting the right things. That your child is deserving of a free and appropriate public education that needs to be shown. That's tangible. You need to be able to see it comparative to where they were. Now, how do you achieve that? Well, you achieve that through a series of very good baselines or starting point. Where is your child functioning now? That's your baseline. That's your present level of performance. And I can't tell you how many times I get into these analysis to where we're preparing to file a due process, and I can tell you this is where the biggest problem lies in goal development, and then after goal development, service development, is that everybody is shooting in the dark. They have no idea what the child's true baselines are in their present level of performance. So if you're guessing on your starting point, then how in the hell are you setting a goal? And there's many times when I review the case prior to filing for the parent, and I say, well, what about this goal? And they're like, well, my kid could already do that. Well, if your kid could already do it, then why did you agree to the goal? That means that it was here, that the goal was here, but your child's present level of performance is over here. That's not how this works. The present level of performance, the starting line needs to be here, and your child's goal here. And it needs to be tangible enough and achievable to where your child is making tangible, measurable progress per the standard of Endrew F. But you gotta hit a good baseline. Now, how do you get good baselines? You do it off assessments. And it's got to be something that is differentiated from what every other student in the school is getting. Otherwise, what makes your child's program special? It's the whole point of special education. It's got to be special. It's got to be differentiated from what your child would get if they were non-disabled. So I have so many schools that are basing their present level of performance or their baselines off of things that they give to all the children, all the dibbles, or something else. And they use that as No, this is individualized. Do you know definitively that that's where the child's deficit and the starting point is for that goal that you're creating? Boom, here's your goal. And then based upon that is, we see this gap. How do we achieve it? That is what goes into services. How do we achieve it? How many minutes do we need a week over the course of the school year to accomplish that freaking goal? And then not only that is, where does that goal need to be taught? Does it need to be pull-out time because of your child's distractibility to where they need to work one-to-one or in a small group to accomplish this tangible goal? Or can it be push-in service in something that is reinforced by the general education staff and resource teacher inside the general education setting? See, that's where all of this stuff is determined. Good baseline, good goal. How are we going to accomplish it? And using what strategy, what peer-reviewed, scientifically based strategy, approach, teaching style, curriculum, what are we going to use here in order to accomplish this goal? And I can't tell you, that's where also the schools screw up. They screw up here, they screw up here, and then they can't sit there and tell you what specific approach that is individualized for your child's learning style is going to be implemented. They don't like to write it down. They've been trained by state departments not to write this stuff down. Now, just because they don't want to name it in the IEP doesn't mean that they don't need to name it in your IEP minutes, or they don't need to write it on a little secret piece of paper, toilet paper, I don't care. But you need to know what the name of that approach is. Otherwise, how do you hold anybody accountable? How do you know that this approach that they're using is truly the one that is individualized and tailored toward your child's learning style? It's insane. That's really the Endrew F standard, taken down, broken down into those 3 steps. Baseline, goal. How do we accomplish the goal using what method that is individualized and tailored toward your child's learning style? You don't really need to get into the whole law aspect. That's what my job is. I mean, your job is to understand it, and I applaud you for doing that, and every parent should read Endrew F. And I'm going to be doing a presentation on it soon. But at the same time, getting these basics down and getting a good IEP developed, worth its weight in gold.